Welcome to the Breech Birth Podcast. I'm Sasha Hopkins, private midwife, breech birth educator, and your host. This is a space to hear the real, raw, and powerful stories of women who have experienced breech birth in all its layers. Each episode features honest conversations with women who've experienced breech firsthand, offering insight and reflection. This podcast was born from the knowing that these stories need to be heard to inform, connect, and reclaim the story of breech birth. Whether you're navigating breech birth yourself, supporting others, or simply curious, welcome and thank you. Hi, Phoebe. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So just to give everyone a bit of context of what to expect with your story, can you please tell me what year your baby was born?
Yeah, so my little boy Jasper was born in 2023, so he's coming up to 2 years old now.
Beautiful. And where were you located at the time of birth?
We are in Adelaide, South Australia.
Beautiful. And what kind of care did you receive during your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum?
So during pregnancy and postpartum, we had a private midwife. We'd hired a private midwife and had planned a home birth, but ended up into the hospital system for our birth.
Yep. And did you have a vaginal or caesarean birth?
I had a caesarean.
And how many weeks were you?
I was 41 and 6.
Perfect. Thank you. Would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself before we start?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Phoebe. I'm a stay-at-home mum to a little boy called Jasper, and I'm a play therapist. That's what my career has been up until this point. And now I'm, home with Jasper, and we've just relocated down to the Fleurieu Peninsula, down on the south coast, south of Adelaide, which has just been a really beautiful sea change and real nervous system reset for all of us as a family. Yeah, so that's just the chapter that we're in at the moment, just really enjoying slowing down, being at the beach, and just enjoying the toddler years with my little man.
Beautiful. So one and only baby?
Just one, yep.
So do you want to start from the beginning, like that first moment falling pregnant? Were you planning? Was it a surprise? What were your intentions for your pregnancy? Tell us a little bit about that big journey.
Yeah, sure. So we fell pregnant unexpectedly, but it had been on the cards. Like, we had been talking about it, we had been thinking about it in the next, say, 6-month time period. We had already started a little bit of preconception prep. We were sort of doing a few tokenistic things, like we were on prenatal supplements and things like that. We were sort of being aware of different lifestyle factors, but it was a little bit earlier than we had anticipated. So it was a surprise, but when we found out, it just felt like it was meant to be, and this was the little baby that was meant to be joining us. And so it was really exciting. In terms of getting care with a private midwife, that sort of happened straight away. I knew that I wanted on the phone and chat to a few different midwives in the area. So thankfully, I had already gotten into the headspace of understanding what private midwifery care looked like. I was very on board with that model of care from the get-go. So I was already there. Like, by the time that I knew I was pregnant, I had delved into the research around home birth, and my partner was on board too. So we were really ready from the get-go. So we had a chat to a couple of different midwives here in Adelaide. And as soon as I spoke to the midwife that we ended up having, it was just beautiful. I just knew that that was the person that was going to support me through the pregnancy. And yeah, so that was really, really great. And then we had her on board right from the start.
Beautiful. So you found a midwife, and how was your pregnancy? What did that look like, that journey for you?
I love being pregnant. I am lucky to say that I had a really healthy pregnancy. I felt really quite well. I was really exhausted in my first trimester, and I was building a business at the time as well, just juggling, life. But I also, throughout my pregnancy, just really, really loved that experience. And yeah, even right up until I carried for almost 42 weeks. And even right, everyone kept telling me, you'll get so over it. You'll be like so uncomfortable. And I was uncomfortable. Sleep was hard, but I really loved that chapter of my life. And I'll always really look back on that as just such a special time, even just with my partner and I, just really I made a conscious effort to just enjoy that time and really connect. And yeah, I think back really fondly on my time being pregnant, actually.
And did you have your appointments in your home, or did your midwife have a clinic that you went to? What did that look like?
Yeah, so our midwife came to our home, and that was another part of my care that I just absolutely loved. And now that I had that model of care, I actually just couldn't imagine. And obviously, it's a real privilege to be able to have access to that care. And I wish more people could, because I know it's not accessible to everyone. But it was, yeah, just a special part of my pregnancy, having that time, building that relationship, and feeling like I could really lay it all out. Any concerns, any questions that was coming up for me throughout my pregnancy surrounding my care or my birth plan, anything like that. We built a really great relationship with our midwife, and it just was something that I really looked forward to. The visits were just a really enjoyable part of our pregnancy as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So at what point did you realise baby was breech? Did you know, or was it a surprise? How did that evolve?
Coming up to, I think it was around 37 or so weeks, my midwife at our regular appointments had been like palpating I think that's the word, my belly.
Yeah.
And there was a point when the baby was definitely head down, maybe just before that 37-week mark. And there was a point there that our midwife could no longer be sure. There wasn't any diagnosis during my pregnancy at all. But she was very clear with us that she was no longer sure and that it was difficult to tell. And that just opened up some conversations between us around how would you feel if a bum came out? That's how she said it, like on the day. And she just sort of approached it like that. So we started having those conversations, and I was fairly confident in what I said, in that I would be fine with that. And I had done a little bit of research during my pregnancy, listened to some podcasts, tried to educate myself before this point around breech vaginal birth. And I'd heard about, that there's a hospital in Sydney that does thousands a year. And I was really on board with that. And I thought, absolutely, like I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. So there was a question mark at that point. From that point on, my midwife didn't confidently say at any point, baby's head down. And it was funny. Maybe it was my intuition. I don't know. But I remember taking a photo of my belly one day. I was lying in bed, and there's just a lump. Like there's a strange head-shaped lump, like towards my rib. And I remember taking a photo and this was after we had this conversation with my midwife. And maybe I was in a bit of denial, but my partner and I would talk about it, and no, it's not a head, So yeah, at that point, until I went into labor, we had no confirmation around that position.
So were you offered an ultrasound to confirm?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. My midwife did offer that and said, here are your options. Like, this is something we could do. And again, at the time, I don't know if it was a sort of me wanting to put my head in the sand a little bit, or whether it was that it wouldn't change anything, particularly for my headspace going into birth. But I declined to have an ultrasound. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess you weren't 100% yes, it's head or bum. Did you try anything to turn baby in case it was bum?
I had been seeing a chiropractor at the stage who was certified in Webster technique, but because I wasn't coming to her with the information that baby is breech, we didn't do anything specifically for that. But I was doing a at-home stretching program each evening anyway, that was about optimal positioning. So I was kind of doing all of the standard things that you would do, like the inversions, all the different stretches.
Like the spinning babies.
Yeah. I wasn't sort of strictly doing it religiously around the spinning babies, but I was doing certain things. Nothing further though, nothing like acupuncture.
Yeah, okay. Oh, do you want to just go into those last few weeks of pregnancy and how you were feeling and how it all started?
Yeah, definitely. So I really loved the end of my pregnancy. It was winter. We were just rugging up and going for walks around the block, and I was really savoring those last few weeks of pregnancy. However, I did find as I passed 41-week mark, there was a little bit of noise from other people, and I found that quite hard, and I was trying to I was really wanting to withdraw then. I just didn't want that noise around of other people's worries or anything. I was really comfortable being pregnant up until 42 weeks. And I was having appointments with my midwife. So, yeah, I was really enjoying that time. I did notice a lot of fears coming up at that time, not so much about the birth, but just about motherhood and how much my life was going to change. Like, I really think that in those last final weeks, I was really holding on to maidenhood. Like, I was really,
Mm.
my biggest fears were about losing my independence and how much was about to change. And was I going to be able to do all the things that I love still? And who am I? Like all of that.
Yeah, that identity.
Yeah, yeah. And so I tried to do a bit of work around that, just writing down my fears in the backyard.
Love it.
EFT tapping, like anything that was coming, I was trying to work through. Even around, I think I was really holding on to my dream birth as well. Like I really
Mm.
wanted that home birth in the water. Like I just had that vision so clearly. And so writing out fears around that. And I did have a fear of going to hospital. And so I was trying to reframe some of those fears that were coming up. And yeah, I think I was in a fairly good space leading up to when my waters broke.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
waters broke first before anything happened.
Yeah. I was lying on my bed and I was in a bit of a grumpy mood actually because I had I had been getting some messages from a friend, and it was kind of that any news, any baby news,
Mm.
like,
Yeah.
and I was lying there just being like, I want to shut that out. Like, and I was lying there kind of texting back, and it almost felt like just like like a swipe inside my belly. Like there was like a limb that kind of swiped inside my belly, and then it felt a little different. Like I just felt like, oh, that. And I stood up and there was just a slight trickle of liquid. And so I went into my partner and we spoke about it. And I said, I think my waters have broken. And he went into sort of action mode, like, where's the birth pool? Like, what is, like, he was sort of ready to, and I was like, I'll text my midwife and we'll just check in and see. Yeah, so my midwife was great, got back to me straight away and said, yep, looks like that might be your waters. Just see how you go, see if anything progresses, and keep me in the loop. It was very chill. So yeah, it was exciting, and we just sort of, my partner and I just got chatting about what we do and what was going to happen. And then about half an hour later, I went to the toilet, and when I stood up, there was quite a large amount of meconium in the toilet. I knew what that was straight away. I knew that was something that was less than ideal. And so straight away, I texted back my midwife and a photo. I love this about private midwives. You can just text them any sort of
Yep.
graphic photo and they're fine with
We
it.
love photos.
Yeah, exactly. So she called me pretty much straight away and was super calm and amazing, as private midwives are, and said, look, I'm just visiting someone else, but I will get another midwife to come to you who's in the area. And this was our planned second midwife. This is someone I had already met, so I had a relationship with as well. So at this point, I was okay. I was a little jolted, but I didn't really know what this meant in terms of what was going to happen or what might change in our birth plan.
And you hadn't started contracting yet, had you?
No. The symptoms other than the meconium and a little bit of sort of my waters. So the second midwife arrived fairly soon after that, and I showed her what was in the toilet, the meconium, and she very gently and calmly and beautifully, as I was sitting down, said what we would likely expect from this sort of a presentation of meconium would be a breech baby. And when she said that, it was a bit of a shock. I I was quite emotional in that moment because once those words I knew what that meant in terms of my birth plan, just based on previous conversations with my private midwife. We had conversations throughout my pregnancy about what would the circumstances be that a transfer to hospital might happen, or, and we had the conversation where she had said, if your baby is breech, I will support you in hospital. That was how it was sort of said. So this midwife was beautiful, held my hand while I cried, and it was a shock. She sort of reassured us a little bit at the time by sharing her own story that her first baby was breech, born at home. Yeah. And so that didn't change. Like, for me, I knew that we would still be going to hospital, but I think that my partner thought that sort of reassured him, and he thought, oh yeah, we'll just have a baby at home. Like, that's still going to be what happens. Anyway, she did feel my belly then and listen with one of the cones.
And Pinard?
Yeah. So she confirmed that positioning. So it wasn't like she just dropped this bomb. She did check first.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. So I still had no contractions. But at this point, I was quite stressed. Like, I felt everything changed. And I sort of went into that hyper aroused state. So anyway, the second private midwife left, and it was arranged with my primary midwife that she would meet us at hospital. So at this point, it was all just pretty slow paced. We just like, I'll meet you there at when you get there, whatever. We went to the hospital and met her there. Even that whole experience, that car ride there was very surreal. Like, I still remember the song. It was just such a almost like out of body experience. I had a hospital bag packed as a very backup scenario. And so start things off, like the very start of my labor, heading to hospital before any contraction, like, it just felt so strange to me. It was just so different to anything that I had expected.
Do you know why you're going to hospital?
I had no contractions yet, and it had only been a few hours, but it was more that the meconium, I think, was the concerning factor, I believe, as to why we were going to hospital, just to sort of check on baby. So we met my private midwife at hospital, and we met an obstetrician straight away. And that was a really difficult encounter. We were met with someone who I felt he seemed quite judgmental. And we were there with our private midwife, but the comments that he was making to us, knowing that we were planning a home birth and had a breech baby, the comments he was making were quite judgmental or condescending, or like, how did you not know that you had a breech baby? Like, kind of questioning the level that we had, and really just like a very, very harsh, not harsh, but a very sort of, condescending tone. And I was quite assertive in that interaction, which I was quite proud of, because there was some things that this obstetrician was saying that I knew weren't evidence-based. Immediately off the first point of call, he was making comments around, because I had said initially I want to have a vaginal delivery, and that really set his tone off around almost telling me how irresponsible it is, or how that's not safe, kind of thing. And I had my pregnant midwife there who was very supportive of me choosing to have a vaginal delivery. But yeah, he was just making claims that I knew weren't evidence-based, because I had researched a little bit around vaginal breech delivery.
Do you remember what some of those claims were, like the statements that were said that weren't evidence-based?
He mentioned the ARRIVE trial, which I knew about that. Like, I knew enough to know that if that's his argument, saying this is why breech birth has bad outcomes. So he was just referencing things that then, when the room, we would unpack with my private midwife, and she would explain further, this is the slant that he's taking, this is an alternative perspective. So right from when we arrived, his perception was caesarean right now. So I was hooked up to my my baby was being monitored. Again, still had not had any contractions, but at no point did my baby show any distress. So I felt, upon having further discussions with my midwife, she sort of offered options like, you may choose this could be one option, or you may choose this is another option. She said, if I said to you, you can have a cesarean in the next few hours, you can meet your baby tonight, where does that land for you? Or if I said you can stay overnight, see if labor starts to progress, and wait for the shift change in the morning and see if there's an obstetrician that you gel with better, how does that sit? And, we just talked about that. And so at this point, we decided that that's what we would do. That best for me. I knew I could go home. Like, I knew that's an option too. And we spoke about that. But in the position I was in there with everything that had happened, I decided that I would stay overnight and just see what happened. So that's what we did. My midwife went home for the night, and my partner and I, we just got sort of admitted to a maternal ward that was in quiet, and it was about midnight by then. And
By the time you got to the ward?
yeah, it was
Wow.
midnight. So my waters had broken around 3 p.m. So we got to hospital at 5. There was lots of back and forth discussions. We did a bedside ultrasound to confirm breech, things like that.
Do you know
Yeah.
what sort of breech? What position?
Right.
Frank?
So, and even then, when we got the bedside ultrasound, my midwife was sort of helping us navigate that. Like, is there any way you can check blood flow? Like, is there any compression? Things like that. So I think we were asking for things and declining things more than what physicians were anticipating. We were kind of pushing back a little bit, we were questioning things a lot. I was noting things a lot. And so maybe that also put the obstetrician off a little. He was also talking to my partner instead of to me, and I found that really annoying. And kept sort of
Which is
butting.
extremely inappropriate.
I was lying there. I am a pregnant woman. Like, I am these informed choices. And it was kind of cool though, because I'm not the sort of person to really stand up. And I felt part of having private midwifery care for me was feeling like I had this person in my corner, and I felt really strong and empowered because I had this person I trusted there. And so in a way, I felt positive about that interaction I had with the negative obstetrician. Felt positive in myself and the way that I handled it. So yeah, we were. It was just us at midnight in this quiet dark ward, and it was the first time that my partner and I were together again, just absorbing everything that had happened and taking a breath. And we just laid together in the little hospital bed, and then pretty much straight away, the first moment that my nervous system went like, when my contractions started, which I'm not surprised by at all.
I'm pretty sure there's some research on that.
Yeah.
We know that's what you need. Quiet,
Yeah,
dark space, feeling loved and safe.
absolutely. Absolutely. So my contractions started, and um we started measuring the duration and how far apart they were, as you do. At the time, yeah, and they were actually fairly close together. They weren't intense at all. Just sort of light surges, but they were around 4 minutes apart, I think, at the time, and lasting maybe a minute. I think my partner went in to the nurses just to get like a hot water bottle or something and had a chat to them. And when they heard that my contractions were 4 minutes apart, I think they were a little bit like, we're not going to have a baby here on this ward. So they straight away were like, they got us to a room, like a delivery suite. Yeah. So through the night, we were just riding through the surges. It wasn't intense at this point. We weren't sleeping, but we were just sort of resting and, riding through it. And then in the morning, a big part of our plan was, I had said, if I'm birthing in hospital, at this point I knew I was birthing in hospital, but I said if I was birthing in hospital, I just didn't want that particular OB to be the one to my baby. So we knew at 8 a.m. the shift was going to change, and we were just going to see what happened. We were just like pretty sure that whoever is next OB is going to be better than that one, because that one was just a really, really negative, awful experience. So just after 8 a.m., these two beautiful women OBs walked in the door, very, very different energy to the man we had met the night before.
Mhm.
And they were very respectful. I spoke to them straight away about wanting to have a vaginal breech delivery. And I questioned them, as I had the male OB the night before, I questioned them about their experience with that. What is your experience? Do you have training in this area? Because I knew from my talks with my private midwife that for positive outcomes for vaginal breech delivery were going to be dependent on the level of skill of the practitioner and the training, understanding of vaginal breech delivery. Oh, I will say one of the points that the OB had made the night before that I knew wasn't evidence-based was he had talked about induction. And I knew that, or I believe this to be true, I may be wrong, that if you have a diagnosed breech baby, induction is actually not evidence-based and it can actually be detrimental. That was something that I believed. He's said that I was very uncomfortable with. So
Yeah. Depends what you read, and also depends on the individual hospital and practitioner. So I know the breech clinic in New South Wales, they do offer induction for breech, but then I know plenty in my area that will not. They won't touch them. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's so much to navigate. All of this.
Yeah, it is. There's not enough research on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we met these OBs and they really listened, offered their opinion, which was still that it would be best to have a cesarean. But they heard me and they respected what I said and my desires and were really gentle and lovely, and there was no pressure at all. But they did also not have really any experience. One was a registrar, one was OB, and they shared that they didn't really have experience with vaginal breech delivery as well. It was not surprising, but disappointing. So at that point, my private midwife came back in the morning and I consented to check my dilation as like a reference point, and I was at that point 1 centimeter dilated. And so at that point with my private midwife, we spoke and chatted about trying a few things to get labor going because it was really still very mild at this point. So, sort of mid-morning, she gave me a herbal tincture, and that really got things going. Within, like, very quickly after that, my contractions really ramped up. And I would say from then on, around 11 a.m. on for the rest of the day, I was in like very active labor. And I will say as well, in the hospital system, my private midwife didn't have admitting rights. So she was there as a support person. Like, there were midwives there as well, but I wasn't particularly engaging with them. They were just sort of reading the monitor and checking in every now and then. They were actually really great. They very much gave us space. And my private midwife sort of took on the role of a doula and did all of the hip squeezes and the essential oils and the emotional support from that point on. Yeah, it was the best. Like, still having that private midwifery care in the hospital, I believe I would have had a very different I would have come away feeling very different. So yeah, we were just trying lots of different positions. At one point I was in the shower. I again had to get like permission to get in the shower, which felt different to, my planned home birth where I was planning to do whatever I wanted, but they allowed me to do that for half an hour.
Was it because you were on the monitor or something?
Yeah.
Did they have the waterproof one or not?
I don't believe so. I didn't have the option of that.
So it had the wire attached like to the machine. It wasn't just a wireless one. Okay.
Yeah, it was attached.
Yeah, right.
I found that quite more comfortable being attached.
Yeah, restricts you a bit.
Yeah, not in my plan. So that was sort of how it went for the rest of the day. I did know that in my mind, I had a little bit of a time frame, which again is not the best headspace to be in, labor to progress beautifully and that. Again, I was in a system that I wasn't planning on being in and I didn't want to be in. And I also then felt like I was on the clock a little bit because I had these OBs that I knew that there was a possibility that I was going to have a cesarean. And I wanted that to be a really positive experience. And I felt that with these particular women, it would be more positive. And I felt like by the end of their shift, I'd be then again rolling the dice. Who's next on shift? And I know that's like in the hospital system, and that's okay. And I did have really great care, but I also felt like in the back of my mind there was this time frame now. So I just labored. I had my TENS machine on. That was my main pain relief throughout that. That was really all I used, and I really liked that. And then in the afternoon, around 3 p.m., I think, the obstetricians came back and they consented to another dilation check. And at this point, I was in like pretty intense labor. Like I was really in it. And I thought for sure that I would be progressing. And it was really intense. And so the obstetricians came back and they checked me, and I was still 1 centimeter dilated. And she was really kind in delivering that information.
Mm.
I think she knew that that would be hard for me to hear. And at that point, I pretty much straight away consented to a cesarean. It just felt like I don't know, maybe it just I'd hit that point where I needed that little bit of reassurance. And I very much know that dilation, mean nothing. But I also felt like I was in this environment which felt so foreign, and it was hard. And at that point I consented to the cesarean. And that was a really, really hard moment for me and also for my partner. Like he was really emotional. To be honest, really emotional the whole time because, again, everything had just gone out the window. We had talked for 9 months about this birth that we were going to have, and I had listened to every podcast and I'd read all of the books, and I was the most excited, like, home birth advocate. I was just so excited for my birth, and even now I still love birth. I think it's incredible, and I am really passionate about it. So it was a really hard moment for me there, but I made that decision very quickly in that moment, and I think I had just reached that mental barrier.
Was there a point once you had made that decision where you felt that acceptance and excitement that you were going to meet your baby at all?
Can't say I did. I was so deeply in labor land at that point. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard for me to even remember this point of my labor. And because I was, the hormones that are flowing through your body, I was out of it. Like I was trying to talk to the anesthetist, trying to give consent, and my eyes were closed. I was on a planet. And to go from like labor land to having to talk to professionals and having to give consent, and I found that really, really jarring. I was stressed at that point. I wasn't like, it's okay, I'm okay with my decision. I wasn't even really very there, if I'm honest. I was just like,
Yeah.
I was in discomfort at that point, and I'd reached that mental block where I was like, I want it to be done now. I literally just wanted the epidural at that moment because I'd labored naturally and I wanted to labor naturally. That is actually something that was very, very important to me. I had a cesarean. I knew I wanted to go into labor naturally. I wanted to labor. That was just something that was personally important to me, just knowing the different hormones and the benefits to the baby and all those different things. Like I felt really proud of myself that I had given it a go. And then once I got to that point, I felt like that was it. I was done. Yeah. And that point, my headspace really changed. Like once I had consented to the cesarean, I was no longer able to really ride the contractions out as well. I felt like the pain wasn't purposeful anymore.
Mm.
Till that point, the pain was purposeful. I was moving my baby down. We were working together. I was feeling great about that. But then when I knew that I was having a cesarean, I just wanted it to stop straight away. I just wanted to be over. And I definitely got into a bit more of a negative sort of headspace.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I will say, despite all of that, and despite it really not being the outcome that I wanted, when I was in the theatre, so, I was then obviously wheeled into theatre, and every person that I encountered was so beautiful and did a really challenging and emotional time feel so much better. Like, there was a beautiful theatre nurse there next to me, like, just like a total guardian angel. My partner and I were both crying so much, like reassuring, being like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And just they would have known, that we had come in from home, but they were so sensitive to seeing that this was hard for us and that this was not our plan. And yeah, this theater nurse, she just explained everything that was happening, and step by step, like in the most gentle, loving way. I can't even explain how impactful that was to me, because it's scary. I didn't want to have an epidural. I didn't want to have a cannula. I didn't want any of these medical interventions. And to have someone gently, literally holding my hand, stroking my face, just holding us through that. It transformed. That's what I took away, that really was so beautiful. So,
It's really lovely to hear, and
yeah.
we don't get to hear about that or see that in the theatre area. It can be quite a contrast, so it's nice to hear those elements.
Yeah. And like the anaesthetist was funny and had one of our phones, and the other nurse had another of the phones. They were like making sure we got we were joking, getting the right angle for the photos, and and I'm aware that this is one of probably dozens of cesareans that happened that day. And yet for us, they still made it feel special, and our wishes and things like that. I have to say I was really blessed that I came away with that experience from feeling so out of control. And I did have a cesarean list written up ahead of everything before I was going to hospital as a backup. So we were able to achieve a lot of the things that were on that list. Things like, we didn't know the gender of our baby, so we wanted my partner to be the one to announce that. So that was respected. We were able to have our own music in the operation. Not that I remember, but knowing that they were respected is important.
And how did you feel when you first laid eyes on your baby?
I honestly, my true honest first experience was like, who is that? Like, it was so wild. Like, we found out that we had a boy, and that was kind of amazing. Like, that was just like, I was in awe of that. But I'm also looking at this baby that we'd just been through so much together, like this intense labor, all this emotion. And I have to admit, my first reaction was just, it was almost surreal that he was there. Yeah. And then our other birth preference that we wanted that was respected, which was really cool because I know it's not typical policy, was I wanted not only delayed cord clamping, I wanted my placenta delivered at the same time so that I could have really extended cord blood coming through, because I knew that delayed cord clamping in a cesarean environment, it's not as delayed as I would.
It's usually only 60 seconds.
Yeah. So that was really cool. Good, they respected that. And so when he came over, his placenta was still attached. And yeah, it was attached for about 15 minutes until it was white. And again, I think for some of the theatre staff, that was a little jarring. There was one nurse who kept coming over saying, can we cut it now? Can we cut it? Like, they were like, just like shocked that we were doing things a little differently. Maybe when I saw that it was white, I consented to it and my partner cut the cord. But yeah, I will say, like, even though my whole theatre experience was really, really positive, the one thing I took away that was hard was I had spoken to the pediatrician specifically about our desires before we went into surgery, before any of this. And I said to her, I would really like my baby to come straight to me. That is my priority, unless it's entirely medically necessary. Like, unless there's something wrong, I want my baby to come to me and checks to be done there or at a later time. And I understand in a hospital, like, these people are so busy, you know, they're wanting to tick the boxes, but they didn't do that. And yeah, that was really, really hard. Like, so he was born and then taken straight to, and he cried and he was super healthy and beautiful. And they took him to check his hips because he was breech. So he wanted.
Currently, we need to do that straight after birth. Okay.
Exactly. She was there checking his hips, and the midwife that we had, our private midwife wasn't in the operation with us, but the midwife who had cared for us in hospital up until that point, she was amazing. She was telling the pediatrician, "What are you doing? Like, it's the baby over there." And I was crying because I knew he was fine. He was crying really loudly. He was fine. He was red. He was so strong. And yeah, that was a moment that felt really just, that hurt. That felt disrespectful after we had spoken about it. But then we had this beautiful moment where she brought my baby over, and as soon as he was on my chest, he was crying and crying. And as soon as he came over and was on my chest, and I said, you know, I'm here, I'm here. And he just stopped crying straight away.
Mm,
It was yeah, that was the moment.
familiar voice.
Yeah. So that was beautiful. Yeah.
So did baby stay with you whilst they finished everything up in the theatre?
Yes, that was, yeah. So my baby stayed on my chest, and
Did you manage to breastfeed there?
not in the theatre, but
Yeah.
we were wheeled out to recovery and breastfed there, and that was really successful straight away, like, which is such a blessing. I was beautifully guided by the midwife that was with us, and yeah, he latched straight away, and that was amazing. And I was just so tired and
Mm.
so out of it as well, which was hard because having wanted a drug-free birth and then, yeah, got cesarean, it's a very different experience. And I think even reflecting upon my birth story, that's something I find a little hard, that elements of my story are a little hazy from that point because, you know, it's a big operation. You have a lot of things, and wish I could remember every little detail because that's just such a massive moment, like meeting your baby for the first time and having all those little moments. I just wish I could remember every detail of, but I can't, and that's okay. Think that I had almost an hour there in recovery with him before they wanted to do a couple of tests, which unfortunately, if I had have been a bit more cognizant, I wouldn't have consented to, I don't think. Not at that time. They were wanted to check for infection. I think because
So the meconium?
perhaps because of the meconium, also because my waters had broken more
Oh,
than
yeah.
20
Yeah,
hours,
of course. Yeah.
and I declined antibiotics at that point. And so they were quite insistent on that. And I just wasn't in a place to consent. I don't even remember that conversation happening. My partner went with him, and upon reflection, we do wish that didn't happen, but, you know, he's navigating this overwhelming situation as well with, you know, no sleep and so much happening. So anyway, he went and they did sort of heel prick tests and things like that at that point.
Did they give antibiotics or they just took blood to check if there was any infection?
They just took blood. They didn't
Okay.
give any
That's unusual. Normally they treat and take blood just in case.
I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming obviously through the process of the
Well,
operation.
they would have had a cannula. Bob would have had a cannula if they were giving antibiotics.
And then again, I don't remember a lot of this time, but I do remember my private midwife was there. She came afterwards back onto the ward and saw us and was there. So she had stayed for the time that I was in theatre and met up with us afterwards. And I just remember being really, really happy to see her because she was my support person really through it all. Yeah, that was that. And then we stayed in hospital for 3 days, and it's just a wild time really to process it all. And I think for me, I think one of the biggest things in my postpartum period was processing what had happened.
Yeah.
It was so big. I'm never expecting to have a cesarean. Yeah, even telling people the news and having talked so passionately about the fact that I was home birth. And then, yeah, it was sad. Like, I was sad that even though I did have quite an empowering experience in the hospital, I felt really good about my choices, really good about the things we said no to. I felt really good about, a lot of it. Once the dust settled and I was at home healing, and coming home and the birth pool's there. Like, it's a
Yeah,
lot.
it's grief. It's a layer of grief because you had this expectation and it wasn't met, and so you're grieving that.
Absolutely. And I do think that that was something that I came to process and take as a bit of almost like a lesson going into motherhood around surrender, because I think in my pregnancy, I had held on so tightly to my dream birth, and I'd
Mm.
done everything right. I'd done all the stretching, and I'd, read all the books, and I'd prepared everything. And it was such a big lesson that I learned, and I'm in a weird way, I do trust that that was the birth that I needed to have to become the mother that I am, and I definitely wish it went differently. Like, I'm not trying to, like, paint it in, like, this overly positive way, because I've had to grieve and I've had to process. I've done some therapy around it and some craniosacral work around it, and tried to really process it, because I could feel it was hard. It was grief in my body for a time afterwards. Yeah. But I will say, having my private midwife again in the postpartum period helped with that. Beautiful debriefs with her. She also used to be a doula, and so she had this really beautiful approach where she talked to me about, like, well, maybe we can sort of have an experience where you can almost experience the birth that you wanted. And so we filled up the birth pool, and we put the fairy on, and we played my birth playlist. And my baby's first bath was in the birth pool. And it was really emotional, because that was the vision I had. And in a way, I still got to have it. It just looked different. And, like, it was still dark, and my midwife was still there, and my partner was there. And I cried, and we talked to my baby about, she guided me to say, like, we were in the birth pool, and she said, you can talk to him about that this is what you wanted for him. This is how you wanted to bring him into the world. And that's what we did. And it was another beautiful part of my healing, I think, to be able to have that experience. I'm really, really grateful for that.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful idea for anyone who's planned a vaginal birth and had a caesarean. It's such a beautiful way to come into that healing space and acceptance of what is, and being able to put a positive aspect on this. And it doesn't have to be in a birth pool. It could be in the shower. It's just putting the intention into it and what you envisioned that to look like. And like you said, like talking to baby, how you wanted to bring them in. And yeah, that's really
And
beautiful.
feel it,
Thank you.
like, I was able to feel that in my body, like,
Mm.
this is what I envisioned. And that's also something I've done in craniosacral as well with the practitioner, just really feel in your body that experience of what you wanted that birth to be like. And so that has really helped me come to terms with everything and how it played out.
So what was your postpartum like? Because obviously it's a big contrast to what you wanted. Did you have any issues with like baby blues, depression, anything like that?
I had a fairly lovely postpartum. The first week
Mm-hmm.
was wild, just rocked us. Just lots of, like, sleeping with baby on chest, taking shifts. I did have some tears. I definitely had some processing to do, but I had a fairly lovely postpartum. Again, I had a lot of support with my midwife, and
Was that till 6 weeks of
yeah,
support? Yeah,
yeah.
great.
Yeah, so I enjoyed my postpartum for the most part. Again, it was just a lot of processing. I did have some difficulty with my scar. I did have to go back to hospital about a week postpartum, and that was really emotional as well. I just didn't want to go back there. Like, I wasn't ready to go back there. I just was not ready to go back into a space that had brought up so much for me. And being in a hospital waiting area for 7 hours with a newborn is full on. But I had to go back and get some antibiotics for that, which wasn't, again, what I had hoped for. But then we our little bubble, and it was winter, and it was just really nice. We didn't have visitors for a couple of weeks. We really tried to protect that space, and my partner just did all of everything around the house and the cooking and everything to look after me so that I could really just heal and look after our baby. So I'm grateful for that.
And how was breastfeeding for you? Any issues?
I was really, really lucky, I think, with that experience. I didn't have any trouble at all. I didn't have any pain or anything like that. So grateful for that. Amid the other healing I was doing, it was really beautiful actually. And 2 years we're still, he loves it. We're still at it.
Baby monster.
Yeah.
So knowing what you know now and having the experience that you've had, would you do anything differently in the future if you had another breech baby or an inkling that there was a breech baby?
Yeah, I think, if I had an inkling that baby was breech again, I do think I would probably um get a quick ultrasound just to check position, just so that if I had information a little earlier on. And my partner and I actually talked about that because there was a time that I went into hospital around, say, 36, 37 weeks for reduced movements, and they offered a bedside ultrasound then. And looking back, we wonder if that was maybe the time that he had turned and sort of his movement pattern changed.
Yep.
We do, looking back, wish we had got a quick ultrasound then, because I feel like if I had have maybe known, I would have had a bit more time to process, maybe do some things, maybe do some acupuncture, maybe do, spinning babies a bit more, or chiro, whatever. But at the same time, I kind of like that. In a way, I think if I knew earlier, I probably would have spent the last few weeks of my pregnancy super anxious instead of in this place really loving being pregnant, really, just I still look back on that time as so positive. And even though my birth experience and going to hospital did not play out how I wanted it to, it was just this small window of time rather than, I probably would be the sort of person who'd be losing sleep, fretting, trying to do all of yeah. But ahead of future pregnancies, I do personally have a bit of a plan in terms of what my movement is going to look like, of maybe creating a bit more space in my body, because I personally believe that my baby just maybe didn't have the room. I never got any feedback in terms of cord around neck or anything like that. I didn't hear any further information from the obstetricians, but I believe that he was really tight in there and didn't kind of have space to move. So I've discovered this practice called bowspring, which is sort of a movement practice, which is all about creating space in the ribs and creating, in the front body. And I feel really good in my body when I'm doing that and when I'm doing that practice. So I think preparing my body, maybe that feels like it might help create some space. But you know what? If I have another breech baby, I'm okay with that as well. Like, I do trust that if that's my story, that's my story again. Yeah, I'll be able to come to terms with it more, I think, if it happens again.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you. I've not heard of that. What was it?
Bowspring. Yeah.
Bowspring. Okay.
Bowspring. It sort of looks a little bit like yoga. It's a dynamic movement practice. Yeah. And it feels really, really good. Just creating lots of space in the ribs, helps you breathe really deeply. Just all about pelvis alignment. And yeah, it personally feels really good, especially as a breastfeeding mom, like just to kind of, create space in the upper body.
Well, anyone listening who's got a breech baby and wanting to flip, maybe they'll look that up and try it. Yeah. Do you have any words of wisdom, any resources that you would recommend, anything like that for anyone listening that's got a breech baby on board?
I think personally, something that really helped me, I connected with one particular other mum who I had seen like on social media. She also had a breech bub. And I think both of us in that space postpartum, having someone to talk to about it, and look, and even if that's a professional, just having someone, if it's someone that's had a breech baby, or if it's a professional that can hold that space for you, or doing a birth debrief, or body work for yourself. Whatever's accessible to you, like, I think all of that has really helped me, particularly for me, the body work side of things and working quickly because I could feel after my birth, I could feel like there was just so much held in my body, positive and negative, like from pregnancy, birth, however you birth your baby, like it's huge, like whether it's vaginally, cesarean, whatever, it's huge. And I think like, yeah, tuning into your body, and if it does need a little bit of support, then that is so understandable through what you've gone through.
Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Breech Birth podcast. These stories matter. They stretch what we think we know and bring voice to experiences that need to be heard. I'm so grateful to the women who have shared their experiences with us, raw, real, and full of wisdom. If this episode resonated with you, please follow, share, or leave a review. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Breech Birth Podcast. And if you have a breech story to share, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, may we continue to reclaim the narrative, one story at a time.